All right, Hari, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so as I alluded to off screen, what I want to jump in from the very beginning is this kind of came to me as I was coming up with some questions, but because you work with a lot of women, you work with a lot of couples as a counselor and as a relational guide, as you like to call it, I'm very curious from your experience working with couples. What are the biggest misunderstandings women have about men and men have about women?
Um, I wouldn't necessarily say, well, I don't really have such gender specific things, but what I would say is that it's always pretty much down to communication. Like whenever
Mm.
I get a couple together and there's like, they come and there's kind of like a stagnant energy between them, it's just because, when you get like that in a relationship and you don't really hear each other and there's just so much trauma in the way of being able to hear each other. And as soon as there's a third person, sometimes it's a bit safer and easier to speak and be heard by your partner because there's a third buffer. So I find that a lot of the times the sessions like people are sort of like this energetically and then by the end they're
Mm.
together, and a lot of the time it's just me holding space or asking the questions to each of them to bring out the deepest stuff. And then usually their partner's like, oh, I didn't know that, because they didn't have the space to share that, or they didn't have the right questions in order to be given that, if that makes sense. And yeah, it's all about kind of a safe space. But I've just had something come to me about men. I would say that men always, quite a lot, they feel like nothing they ever do is good enough for a woman.
Mm.
Because, there's a big pattern generalizing here of men wanting to please their mother, and depending on what kind of
Oh.
mother they had, it's like, so men try so hard and quite often they feel like it's not enough for the woman. And for women, I would say a lot of the time it's not feeling the man's presence. Like, whatever, just like when you're here with me, are you actually here? I'm like actually feeling you. It's not necessarily so much about, yeah, it's like feeling his presence. And then he doesn't necessarily have to say anything. It's more just about feeling him with her. But obviously, that's those two sort of interlink, because if he doesn't
Yeah.
feel good enough, he's like, well, whatever. Nothing I'm going to do is good enough. So I'm just going to zone out. And then she's like, you're not even here. So it's, it's kind of a bit of a, that's one sticking point, I would say, that comes up sometimes.
Mm. That's interesting. Like it just makes me think that like in relationships we often don't have access to a part of ourselves, or at least we feel like we don't have access to a part of ourselves, because as what you just said, like you'll be a mediator, you'll be a third party, and they're kind of angry at each other, and then you provide the space for them to be vulnerable and share how they actually feel, their fears, their frustrations, which most of their frustrations are a lot of the time fears, kind of masked and projected forwards. Same with a lot of time anger. Anger is usually weaponized hurt, from my experience, or crossing a boundary. So there's several types, but one like kind of anger that I feel like you get in relationships a lot, in I'd almost call it chronic anger, that like sizzling under the surface
Press
all the
rage.
time. It's suppressed rage, and then it's like, because yeah, you don't feel valued, you don't feel like the man, as you just said, doesn't feel respected, doesn't feel valued. And then that's an interesting one. And again, this there is no right answer to this. I'm just genuinely curious with your expertise. Have you noticed, and I like what you said too before. You said that it's not necessarily a man and a woman problem. From what I gathered from that is, between the lines I'm reading here, is it's more of a masculine feminine energetic problem. Is some a woman could be in the masculine energetic and then could end up maybe even almost acting like a lot of the, like working out those manly problems, and then vice versa. Generally it's the other way around. But so I'm curious, from, even if we get beyond the man and the woman for a moment, or we can do a man and woman, who do you think is, from what you've gathered, what do you think is the main instigator? Is it usually the man who doesn't feel like, or is it literally just, if you know what I mean, is it like one party will create the catalyst for the spinning out of control, or is it, yeah, how do you see the beginning of these issues play out?
I mean, it's always a symbiosis. It's never just one-sided. So, and on both sides, everything always pretty much roots back to childhood. So it's not, for me, it's not necessarily finding about like, okay, he started it or it's coming from him. It's more like is these two persons trauma interacting, and where is it like it's doing this rather than this? And I'm all about making the bridge so that they can understand what's happening between each other, because that's usually what happens. Like, I'll do something from my trauma, and my partner's like, he's seeing it through his projection of reality, and he's like, oh, she's being like this. And then I come back and I'm like, oh, this is actually what's happening. And he's like, oh, that isn't what I thought. And it's very rare that the way we see reality through our little projection screen is actually what's happening to that person. So what I do is I'm like, okay, I try to see both sides, see the bigger picture, zone into each person to validate their experience and open it up so that each of them can see clearly, oh, there's just a little child hurting inside. And for them to then have empathy for each other and then for themselves. And then once you're clearer on how each of you work, it's easier to have compassion and empathy rather than like this idea or this story that we've been running, like they're trying to hurt me, they're doing this on purpose. We get all of that out of the way. I mean, it doesn't mean this is just maybe with one specific topic, but it really helps, because then when that certain pattern comes up or trigger comes up again, there's more space because there's more understanding of what's happening, if it makes sense.
Yeah, from what I gather by that is like you're trying to humanize them. You're trying to humanize both parties to themselves, because when you were speaking about that, like what came to me is that we project our relationship with our mother and our father onto our partner. So if because that's the most intimate relationship we know. And we've been around our parents for so long a lot of the time that we have so much information, and we have so much of a capacity to fill in the gaps with those projections. So if someone does something that reminds you of, like, let's say you're a man and your wife does something or your girlfriend does something that reminds you of what your mom used to do, then you'll just fill in the blank. And again, you don't know why she did it, but you're like, there is an archetypal pattern, because in some sense, I'm not sure why this is the case, but I feel like in some sense, like Carl Jung always used to talk about archetypes, like when he was alive. That's what I mean, used to. So he always talked about archetypes, right? And then in some sense, I feel like, when you come into the world, your parents are gods, right? They aren't really real. They're gods. They're the holders of justice and virtue, and whatever they do in some sense is the truth until you learn that it's not. And I think in some sense, because you're around them at that age, when you're in like a lot of the time theta brainwave patterns, so 0 to 7, you're just a sponge. And so like you almost see your parents every day, or you see them so consistently. Like I remember someone asked, I think it was Jordan Peterson, what an archetype is. And he said an archetype, like a way of looking at it, is like when a girl plays with a dollhouse. And there's a parent, there's a mom, there's a dad, there's a kid. Like, she knows what a father instinctually is. She knows what a mother is. And it's like the father that she creates a story of in her head to play make-believe with the dollhouse, none of the things she makes a father did are probably real, but they're all kind of a culmination of everything she saw her father do, or everything she saw fathers on TV do. And so these archetypes, in some sense, from what I gather, are a collection of every experience you've had with a pattern. And the pattern is the father. So it's like you've seen your father 1,000 times in your life. And then you almost subconsciously, you take those 1,000 incidences of being around your father, and it's like in a moment, your brain combines all of the things that are consistent, and it takes away all of the things that aren't. So out of those 1,000 experiences, what you is the only thing left is the archetypal pattern of the father, or that relationship you have with authority, with someone you love. Because a lot of the time, the reason, from what I've gathered, your relationship with your partner is very similar to your relationship with your parent or so, or someone like that, is because I remember Paul Chek saying that your relationship with your partner, a lot of the time in love, you are experiencing that relationship and love from the maturity level of a child. Most of the time, it's not adults being present in relationships, it's children. Because in sometimes we love this person enough to open our hearts up, let our walls down, and then what we're left with is our scars and our traumas. And so there isn't really a question in this as much. But yeah, like I just back to this idea of like, yeah, just being around like men and women. What have you noticed that I know you said that men often feel like they aren't valued and that whatever they do isn't good enough. Women feel a lack of presence with men. From what you've gathered from most women and most men, what do they want? Like, what are some of the base things that you've noticed they want?
Well, I think it's what everyone wants, which is to feel loved. Because to me, when I really condense it down, all of my traumas, everything that I have inside of me, when I boil it down, when I percolate it, it's all me not feeling loved or not feeling accepted as I am. So to really simplify it, most of the trauma we have, that is the base. Because if there was love there initially and we really felt seen and we really felt loved, it wouldn't be a trauma, because that's the very reason trauma got created. Because there wasn't anyone there to hold us, to witness us, to love us in that. So it's like so much of my trauma is, I was alone in it and I didn't know what was going on and I was isolated. And so it all got internalized rather than, and that's it ends up how we treat our inner child. We have stuff coming up and we just push it aside. We're like, oh, no, like go into a room and just be alone, rather than, if you see a kid now and you see them crying, your instinct is to go up to them and be like, are you okay? We don't quite often, until we start doing inner work, we don't do that with our own inner child because we didn't necessarily receive that, with the intense traumas when we were kids. So yeah, that would be my, yeah.
Your answer to that. I'm just thinking of like how pervasive trauma is in society.
It's huge.
Like I'm like, how did we get to a point, or have we just always been like, have we ever had, pardon me, like have our shit together? Like you know what I mean? Like I'm curious, like, because one way of looking at it is like, how do we get to a point where we're all so traumatized and our parents are so traumatized and their parents are so traumatized, or have we never? Is it not like we had something good and we lost it, or maybe we've never had a mentally healthy society and we're actually hopefully in the next 1,000 years going to develop into that? What's your perspective on culture and trauma and just how it's become or always has been so pervasive?
I mean, I think in the ancient civilizations that aren't talked about so much, like Atlantis, I think these were much healthier and much more intelligent civilizations than we are now. That's why they kind of been shunned and said, oh yeah, it's just a myth. So I think we are coming to this crux of just the absolute shit of humanity, basically. Like the way that we're living isn't sustainable in all ways. And that's where the tipping point happens. That's where, things have to crack. So I think for me anyway, we're in that time in history now, which is, it's an amazing time to be alive, but it's also very intense. So I feel that, yeah, humanity as it is right now is at a huge change. And that's why, the word trauma is everywhere now. It wasn't like 20 years ago. No one talked about trauma. Like Gabor Mate, like the work he's doing in the world, incredible. And people can receive him because he's not just spiritual, he's got the science background and it's amazing. And it's everywhere now. So the awareness is huge just because it's time. And there is something about the timing as well. Like if you look at the kids that are being born now, they're so much more aware than
Really?
I was. Yeah, like the consciousness is higher. Like the consciousness of the planet is expanding. It's getting higher because we are shifting as a planet into something else. So it's sort of about the time as well. Like we were just born in a time where it was like it was just starting to open, and now we're getting to
Mm,
experience it. But like if I'm to have a child, like in a few years, they'll probably be way more awake than I was, and and then hopefully because I'm choosing to do the work, they might not get as traumatized as I did.
yeah. Do you do you think they're more mature than we are, purely from an energetic standpoint, or do you think it's the access to the internet,
I think
or both?
I don't know if I mean the internet is incredible in a way, but if you look at what the internet is, it's a technology to always be connected to everyone. But as us as humans, we have that ability inside of us. We can be telepathic, and we can connect with people wherever. You ever had that thing where you like think of a friend and you're like, oh, I haven't heard them for a while, and the next day they text you because
Yeah.
they felt you feeling them. This is the World Wide Web in us. So the internet is just that, and I think that the kids coming in, they're more attuned to them being the technology. So it's not necessarily that they're more mature. I think they're just kind of like more aware or more conscious, let's say, like more switched on, just because of the timing of the
Mm,
planet and how it is, the frequency that they come in at, I feel.
yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. And then there's like, because I've been thinking about this, like this exact same thing. The maturity level of children seems to be way higher than it was when I was a kid as well. And I think about like, again, I think about podcasts and the internet, and I'm like, there was a time when I would have to accidentally stumble upon incredible works of art. I would have to stumble upon Leonardo da Vinci or this person or that person. And those things weren't, to my knowledge, weren't as readily available. And I like, at least with me, I'm auditory more than I am visual. So I'm more efficient retaining and gathering information auditorily
Mm.
than physically. So like I listen to so, or at least I listen to, I don't listen to as many anymore, but I listen to so many podcasts. And like a podcast is like you are literally just hanging out with someone who's brilliant. You know what I mean? It would be like, the technologies we have access to today are like hanging out for literally 300 to 600 hours with Leonardo da Vinci. Like that's what a podcast is. Like I've listened to 100 to 200, probably around 100 episodes of Paul Chek, 100 to 200 episodes of Aubrey Marcus. Just very wise people, like our generation's Leonardos and Rudolf Steiners and stuff. And we can argue that maybe they were more brilliant back then. Who cares? But it's like we have just access to like literally being a fly on the wall of hundreds of hours of conversations behind closed doors of brilliant people. We didn't have that before. Like we
Mm.
only had these in some sense, like I like books, but I find them much more boring than podcasts. Because podcasts, for me at least, I I love podcasts because they're so conversational. They're so
What's alive?
colloquial. Exactly. It's alive. It's like a and again, a lot of books weren't written with two people at the same time. It would be
Mm.
one person kind of isolated, and then writing a book. And it's like they didn't have the filming technology before, like I think the 1900s, if I recall correctly, to really record things.
Mm.
And so, how would you piece together something that could have the potency of a podcast? Because a podcast, or at least the way I do them and the way that the people I follow do them, is you get two or more brilliant people in a room and you just talk for 3 hours or 2 hours or 1 hour. And it's like, we've never had that before. And so, when I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I think there is this awakening process, and then astrologically, you know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
I know what you're saying.
So it's like, I remember, I think it was Alan Watts who said what astrology is, or at least your natal chart, is the universe. You at birth are a snapshot of the universe at the time of your birth. So the energies of the universe, where the universe was, where consciousness was in the cosmos, that's who you are. And all these energies flow in different angles and different all these things. And even if you get an astrocartography, you see how they actually influence geographically different places on Earth, right? And so when you look at yourself, you're like, I'm a snapshot of the universe at the time. So if the universe is expanding, if the universe is growing more consciousness, it would make sense that the people born at a later date than you would be snapshots of the universe waking up even more. Every year, the universe is getting a bit more awake. And so the kids that are born 20, 30 years after us, it's like, it would make sense that they're more awake or have the potential to be more awake. And then you have this interesting push and pull, I feel, of mainstream culture and propaganda essentially like almost brainwashing. And I don't want to call it brainwashing. I want to call it everything is projecting its worldview onto you, good or bad. Everything is always a projection of a worldview being put on you. And so when someone tunes into my podcast, what's being projected upon them is my worldview. When someone watches a TV show or reality TV or this or that, they're getting a projection of that worldview. And sometimes those worldviews are being manicured to actually have an impact on people in a certain way. So I sometimes feel like the youth of today, in a weird way, are these beings that are full of so much potential, and they have access to this thing called the internet, which is like a speed of light pathway of all information that they have access to. And they can get it so quickly. They don't have to go to a library. They don't have to go to the Library of Alexandria. They don't have to go to the Vatican. They don't have to go through all of these hoops to get access to brilliant technology or information. They literally can just download a podcast on their phone. And then, as I said, then there's this like push and pull of, there is brilliant stuff on the internet, and then there is mind-numbing propaganda on the internet. And I find that, especially, it seems like the children of today, there's like almost like, I feel like a war, and I don't want to make it seem overly dramatic, but there's this conflict being played out on the highway that they're getting most of their information, which is the highway of the internet. And that highway of the internet, you can almost see it has cartels, has police officers, has yogis, has all these people, and they're all trying to take up real estate on this highway, and they're all almost fighting for control of this highway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is true. Like, yeah, the souls coming in now are definitely whatever, of a higher frequency. But yeah, like I remember when I was like 9 or whatever, and the internet was like a new thing, and I was like, oh my God, they're coming in with that. It's just normal. And yeah, if they are directed to the good stuff, awesome. But you need so much discernment these days, like you said, about what you're actually tapping into. Because for me, like, I like podcasts and stuff, but I'm very particular about what information I let enter my brain. And I don't
really,
I just wait. I wait until I'm guided, because, like, for instance, I love Matthias De Stefano. For him, I got a big ding, ding, ding. He's amazing. But it's still, there's only so much I can take in at a time, because the information is just like, I can't just keep binge listening. So, and I love Aubrey Marcus too, but it's like, I wait until I'm cooled, until I have space, because there is such a thing as information overload. Knowledge isn't necessarily good. Like, just having so much information in our brain, like, for me, it's like, what am I being pulled to? What am I being directed to? Because that's the wisdom of what I'm here to give, what I'm here to do. So I use all these amazing people that have things out there to accessorize what I already have, not to just like busy and like get more shit in the way, because there's just information overload these days. There's so much stuff. So I really try to practice discernment with that. And that's the thing with kids, right? Like we can't really necessarily control them with the internet. They're just going to do what they're pulled to. But what they're pulled to is going to be what they're pulled to. So some kids will be really into doing yoga from a young age, and some kids will just want to play video games. Like there's no right or wrong. It's just what they're here to experience also. So, but I think everything is way more intense these days because the speed of technology, like what we have available now, is so different to when I was a kid. Like I was watching like video cassette tapes. And now you just watch Netflix. Like there's no fucking DVD. Like no one even does DVDs these days. It's all like online, and there's no CDs, and it's just everything is online. It's so different. Everything is super fast and throwaway. That's the thing. So it's like because you have so much available, you just go boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I'll take that. But it's like, is it actually going in?
True.
Yeah, and like Tinder, like, oh yeah, there's so many people. I'll just swipe. Oh, I don't even give a fuck, whatever. And it's like, what the hell? Like, if you wouldn't do this 20 years ago, just like that guy in the bar, no. You would just go up and talk to them. It's kind of like that with information too. Like, there's so much information. It's like, we just take it in, but we're not really listening. So I really like, okay, I'm really going to listen to this and give it my full presence rather than doing a podcast and doing 10 other things at once, which is what most people do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm kind of going through a process like what you're talking about right now. Because I think I told you I'm moving to Mexico on Saturday.
I don't think you told me that. Like, that's cool.
I guess I
Amazing.
did. Thank you. And one thing is by default, or at least the way I've been conditioned and trained, is I don't trust anything but myself.
That's great.
In a sense, it's like I didn't trust my father growing up. I didn't trust a lot of people growing up. I didn't trust teachers. I didn't trust anything because I was expelled twice, suspended like 25 times. So I only trust myself. And in some sense, beyond that, I don't even trust myself because what I've gathered is that I only trust systems. Like, so essentially, like I need to know where I'm going to end up. So in my trip to Mexico, as of right now, I don't know where I'm going to end up in Mexico, right? Just like I talked to a psychic and she just said this part of your journey is just about learning and trust the universe, right? And so I was talking to my soul and I was asking for information about where I'm going to end up. No information. The only piece of information my soul will give me is the first week of my 6-month stay. Like it will give me the first week, won't give me anything after. And it's
time to let go of control.
Exactly. And it is monumentally stressful for me. It is like I feel a little bit of panic because I've been trained that if I don't put in all of the work, everything will fall apart. Like that's what I mean by I don't trust anything but myself. And even like I don't trust my higher self, I trust my lower self. I trust my grinding self. Like that's the self I trust, not the higher self. Because I up until August, I didn't even have access to what my higher self was. I didn't have access to my intuition. I didn't have access barely to my instincts. Or at least I wasn't aware I had access. I still think I had access. I think that the universe has been guiding me my entire life. But the difference is now I'm aware of its guidance. Before it was unconscious. I was unaware of its guidance.
If you've only just started playing with that or practicing with it, it's going to take time until you go, whoa, because you've been your whole life on this operating system of like, I'm in control. So it's really hard to suddenly be like, okay, actually, I realize to actually genuinely like, okay, yeah, I'm not actually in control. Like I think I am, but I'm not. And just have to like, it's a big journey. Like I'm in that journey too, of fully trusting like
how long
abundance.
Have you been on this journey?
I would say when my Saturn return came. So when I was 27, that's when it started. I'm 34 now. But there's levels of it. There's so many levels of it, Anton. So I'm in like the deepest level of it that I've ever been in now, which is like fully letting go of like control with money and like, okay, I need to be in control. I need to know that I've got enough money for this. It's like, no, I'm just going to trust in the universe. The more I put out this energy of like, oh, I'm not going to have enough money, then I'm going to create that. So I just like keep coming back to like feeling that fear, giving it space, and then just relaxing and into the knowing that the universe is abundant and I'm always taken care of. Because whenever I look back in my life at anything I worried about, it always worked out. Maybe not in the way that I wanted it to, but I didn't end up on my ass. I'm still alive.
Okay,
So this
so
is what I'm in.
yeah, so here's a mindfuck question. You know how they talk about law of attraction and what you just said, how if you think negative thoughts, you get negative things come your way. Well, from what you just said, every time negative things came my way or things seemed to fall apart, they worked themselves out. So, do you think you can actually, with negative thoughts, do you think you can actually essentially fuck up your life beyond repair? Or do you think in some sense you were actually like almost meant to have, like from a higher level, you were meant to have those negative thoughts to have an experience, to learn from that experience, to talk to other people? You know what I mean?
Well, we're like a radio, right? Our brain is like a radio. So we've just got endless waves going through, which are thoughts. We can't really change those thoughts. So like I have loads of negative thoughts about like, oh, you're going to run out of money. You're going to have to go back and live with your mom. Like you're going to be a loser, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, after hearing those so many times, I'm like, I'm not listening to that. They're still there. Like the thoughts don't go. Maybe each time they come up and I go, okay, I see what it is. I recognize you. Then I drop down into my belly and I feel the fear. I give that space. And then maybe that fear like releases a little bit, but it doesn't go. It's just my relationship to it changes. My relationship to these repetitive thoughts changes. And at some point I see them and I'm like, oh yeah, like you just tune them out, but they're still there. It's just I don't give them any energy.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's not necessarily like the negative thoughts create a bad life. It's like what happens after that. Like, okay, yeah, I believe that I'm going to move in with my mum and I'm going to run out of money. And then everything from that thought causes me to go into loads of anxiety and make bad decisions. And like from that place of me believing that's true, I make loads of crazy decisions that's off kilter. That's how I feel it works.
I just had an epiphany. Aubrey Marcus and Blue talked about this exact same thing on a podcast. They were talking about law of attraction. And they're saying the misconception a lot of people have about law of attraction, which you pretty much just said, is most people think, when I think negative thoughts, I'm going to move in with my mom. I'm going to change like my destiny. I'm going to, fall off my destiny path, blow up and die. You know what I mean? Essentially my life's going to fall apart. But I think it was Blue. She said something really interesting. She's like, the thing you're manifesting isn't necessarily like, because again, from everything you just said, every time I had negative thoughts and I was focusing on fear and I was focusing on, oh my God, I'm in this terrible place, the universe had my back. And when I look back, it was all perfect. So if every time you focused on the wrong thing and ended up perfect, it means that maybe it wasn't the wrong thing. Maybe it was just an experience you needed. And then Blue, she said, what the law of attraction really is, from her perspective, and I'm very curious, I want to dive more into this, meditate on this myself, is that what the law of attraction does is it brings you the emotion of what you're feeling. So if you're going through like a rough time, physically, you know what I mean? Just like, okay, life's kind of falling apart, objectively speaking. Like, I just lost my job. My mom just died. You can get caught up focusing on those negative things. And then when you're focusing on the negativity, what maybe is actually the only thing manifesting is the emotion of the thing you're feeling or the thing you're focusing on. So if you're focusing on death, let's say, if death's happening all around you and I'm walking through the valley of death, I don't have to get caught up in the grand illusion of death. I can walk straight through the cemetery and just focus on other things, playing guitar or like, oh, I'm gonna write a song. Butterflies. You could literally be walking through a 10-minute walk through a cemetery, and the whole time you could be in your head, man, when I get home, I'm gonna write a new song. Oh man, there's this awesome song, and literally there's death all around you, right? And then so maybe what the law of attraction is what a lot of people do. They see death all around them, and they get so focused in on the death that they actually feel death. They feel the decay. They feel the sensation of decay. They feel the emotion of decay. And then that's what's manifesting. So maybe it's like, who knows? I don't know. But because again, like the more I talk to people who are very not enlightened, but tapped in and self-aware, it's like, okay, what event in your life that you thought was terrible was actually terrible? Or is it everything you thought that was terrible, you look back and you realize it was the best moment ever? So it's like, okay, all those times when you were caught up in the morass of how terrible your life is, it was actually beautiful and it was perfect. So is
Oh,
there
yeah.
any is anybody has anybody actually like kind of, and I know we're in some sense in a weird way we're a different breed of human being. It would just like when I look at some people that die at birth, a baby that dies at birth, a baby that gets caught in gang warfare, and then like a kid, like a 13-year-old kid, 15, gets caught in gang warfare and dies. I'm like, I don't, I don't think my life path was meant for that in some sense. Like, I don't know if I would ever actually kind of end up in a gang. Like, me incarnating in this lifetime, this is just a hypothesis. I don't know. I have to talk to people that have kind of thought about this more than I have and again, meditate on it. But, like, I feel like when I came this lifetime with my personality, the life events I was supposed to have as a kid, my astrology chart, my numerology, all of these different factors, these maps of my life, it was like, is any part of that map like, yeah, he might end up, homeless and being in a gang in New York. I'm like, I don't know how anything in my life could end up there, like my personal life. And so, from what I'm getting at, back to this idea, and I want your perspective on this. Yeah, do you think that maybe what law of attraction actually is manifesting is the emotion of something, or do you think it's actually can influence the event that happens? Like, can it attract an event that usually would not happen in your life, and bring it forward into your life? How do you kind of see that relationship?
The only thing that's coming to me is that the universe is whatever you need, whatever's inside of you that needs to come out. The universe is a reflection for that. Be it a dog, be it you right now, be it anyone, like this plant. So it's like whatever is inside of me, everything is a reflection. So pretty much like that's how I see it. I don't really what you asked before about can it attract a super random event? I mean, anything is possible, really. Like there's freak things that happen to people all the time, right? That they never would have expected. So yeah, it's possible. But I would say, yeah, like what you were saying about Blue saying about the law of attraction as emotion. In that sense, yeah, like you're having these repetitive thoughts, these negative things, then your emotions are pulling something is coming to you so that you can free yourself of this emotion, because this emotion is kind of it wants to move and it's likely that it's not moving because you're stuck in a loop and you're not necessarily in the body feeling or giving space for it to move. And I just had like a de-armoring session today, which was incredible, which was
What is
like
that? A de-honoring session?
de-armoring like in your body, like
Oh,
this my friend would press specific points in my body because I hold a lot of tension in my jaw, for instance. It's where like when I've been angry in the past, I've just been like, I'm fine. So there's all this tension here. I'd be holding it so hard. And he'd press it so hard that I would have to release through my voice. And then my whole body would be shaking, releasing this like
whoa.
old energy. So it's like when we just are more open and we have these thoughts or whatever, and then we have an accompanying emotion, and the universe brings us something to try and bring that emotion out. Usually what happens is we either completely disconnect and stay in the thought, or we just completely disassociate, so that emotion gets trapped. But when we're more open, we just allow the emotion to come out, whether it's anger, joy, sadness, whatever it might be, and it doesn't get trapped. So I think it's always like that, because we are just energy in motion, right? We are energy, and it's just everything is always moving, and we as humans tend to get a bit stagnant because we don't get taught necessarily how to move through things, and we get quite a lot of trauma in our childhood. So in that way, yeah, I think the law of attraction is helping us. Like even when my partner does something that really annoys me, I'm like, oh, it's actually a gift. Maybe I don't see it as a gift in the moment, but afterwards I'm like, well, he's really showing me that I have a shitload of anger still. And I want to vomit that on him when really it's about my dad. So there's always a gift in it. Maybe you don't have to see it in the moment, but when you can reflect and see that. I just want to say what you said earlier about like, I think that we can have traumatic things happen in our life that maybe we never really fully get over. Like my dad died when I was 9. I don't necessarily look back at that and go, oh, it was better than I thought it was. But what I do see is that it brought me to where I am now. And I, this life path, I don't think I would have come to start healing people and holding the space for people had I not had that experience. And that's not to say that, my sisters, they didn't become healers, but it was just I needed that springboard to get me to where I am now. And that's the gift. So there is always a gift in when we look back, but sometimes it can be harder to find. And I don't think it's
Yeah.
always easy.
And sometimes I feel like things aren't even necessarily gifts. I feel like they're the thing that programs our values. I was thinking about this morning on a walk about my father, and I realized that one of my primary values in life is freedom. That's a very big thing. Emotional freedom, physical freedom, freedom of self-expression, all these things. Because my father denied my freedom growing up, essentially, not physically, but just emotionally through manipulation, emotionally and sometimes even physically. He denied freedom to the degree that my soul craved and cried out for freedom. And it's like, this is the one value I will not negotiate because it's too painful, because I know what it feels like to not have freedom. So even in that degree, I don't look at that event and I go, oh man, that's such a gift. It made me like value freedom. It's like, it's almost beyond that. It's like Anton Czachor, so much of who he is in this lifetime. And again, Anton Czachor is this lifetime. Again, my soul is not necessarily Anton Czachor, but Anton Czachor, this incarnation, like so much of my personality is just like because of those events in my life. You know what I mean? It's like, why do we value peace? Why do we value harmony? Why do we value strength? Why do we value freedom? Like, probably because there was some event that was traumatic, and maybe for some people not traumatic. Maybe they were able to develop a value without trauma. That would be interesting. But for I think a lot of us, we develop values through trauma, because usually trauma is a denial of something. It is a denial of what something that the human species needs, wants, and requires. So there is this natural human need for freedom. Freedom of self-expression, freedom of liberation, freedom of travel, freedom of being able to live your life the way you want to live it. And most people don't value freedom very highly because they haven't had it restricted. And then people like me that were restricted that very thing, like oxygen. You know what I mean? Someone who is restricted oxygen would probably end up devoting some aspect of their life to the understanding of the human breath, of the lungs. You almost end up with like a Wim Hof, someone who's devoted their life to understanding the physiological effects of cold on the body.
That's not why he did it, though.
I know.
Which is a really good thing.
It was because his wife died.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like in some sense, like trauma a lot of the time creates these values or whatever. And it's interesting, just because it's like so much of these things, just like directly develop who we turn into. But something I do want to go into with you is because you alluded to your story a little bit, and I'd love to jump into your story and how you became who you are today. And I'd love for part of this story at least to go through the Saturn returns period, because it seems like I am where because I'm 27. And again, I was...
You're moving to Mexico. Big change.
Yeah. And 26 is August when my spiritual side started to open up. August. I turned 27 in September. So it was literally I think it was like 1 month. I think it was like August 20th. A lot of stuff started to open up. So it was like 1 month, pretty much before my birthday. I started my 27th birthday. I started to develop a lot of these things. So I'm curious with you. Yeah, please take us through the story of your life and how you ended up where you are today.
You mean from little?
Yeah.
From when I was young?
Little. Yeah.
Well, I can nutshell it, but yeah, I found out that my dad had cancer when I was 7. And my memories are pretty hazy of that. I think I was in denial about kind of intuiting that he was dying, but I don't know if it was ever like directly spoken, because I had 2 younger sisters as well. So yeah, he died then when I was 9, and I pretty much completely closed up emotionally from that point. My middle sister, she cried a lot about it, but
Hmm.
yeah, there just wasn't a lot of emotional openness between us. You know, my mom really suffered, and understandably, right, being left with 3 kids and losing the love of your life. And but there was a distinct lack of support through that time, which I don't blame my mum for, but that's just how it was, right? That's just what it was. So I was very emotionally suppressed, but also very angry, but not really connected to my anger.
Hmm.
Um, so, had acne, all these things. They put me on hormonal pills when really, they never ever once asked, "Do you have any trauma?" Like, it was just all,
One second. Acne. What does acne have to do with trauma?
wow, it's just like, I don't want to get too much into like the the narrow awfulness of some parts of allopathic medicine. But yeah, like I was really angry and it was all coming out, like all of this emotional stuff. Like most people that have acne, there's like emotional stuff that they're not necessarily connected to.
Because
So it was
I
all
had
coming out on
brutal
my skin.
acne. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, my acne only went away really when I started opening up emotionally. Um, but yeah, I went
Hmm.
traveling when I was 26. I was like, finally, I need to go. I wanted to go since I was 18, but I stayed in relationships and just did the safe thing. And then that opened me up to a certain point. And then I came back to a normal job and I realized this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, but I have no idea what I'm meant to do. And then I just quit and I went to a sexuality festival in this community in Sweden called Angsbacka. Then I met the love of my life, the guy I'm with now. And then we traveled. I got into this healing group, left that. And, but anyway, in this sort of healing group, that's where I sort of learned to open up to my emotions. And yeah,
And
this
when
was
was
around,
this?
yeah, so I was 27, 28.
So Saturn
20,
returns.
27 was when I like left London and I met my partner, and then I turned 28 soon after. And then, yeah, and then I found out that I had this intuitive gift, was quite psychic, more than I ever realized. I'd never really looked at any of that stuff because I never was around anyone that did anything like that. And so then,
Hmm.
yeah, then it was sort of a big learning process, a lot of healing work in these groups and learning about things and finding my own way through it. But before that, I was completely emotionally suppressed. Like, I remember when I had my first big healing session, I would say, and they were like, "Oh, I want you to feel your anger towards your dad." And I was like, "What anger? I don't have any anger towards him." They were
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, you do." And I was like, "No, I don't. Like, he was great." And then I was like, "Okay, I'm going to entertain that I could be wrong." Opened up, suddenly had all these images flashing, and I suddenly remembered all of the stuff that I'd kind of blocked out through denial, just because I didn't want to remember the bad things, because, and then suddenly I
Hmm.
was like, whoa, it was kind of like knocked me sideways for a day and a half. How I realized I'd been in denial for like 20 years about these things. I was quite shocked.
Wow.
And so, yeah, then I would say it's been a process of sort of opening up all of that, acknowledging it, accepting it, and finding peace. And I'm still in the process of learning how to forgive him and work through all the trauma in my body from everything that happened. So, yeah.
Wow. Do you mind taking us through your Saturn returns period a bit?
Yeah.
I'm very curious with that because I'm starting mine very soon.
So I moved back to London after traveling when I was 26, and then I
Hmm.
went into a deep depression.
Hmm.
I I'd already started waking up, I would say, a little bit because I was writing every day when I was traveling, and then I started to realize things, started to feel things that I hadn't felt because I hadn't really taken myself out of the norm. So then when I moved to London, I was working in jobs with people that they didn't really want to make friends. They weren't really my people. So I would come home and I would just be on my computer, like using the marvels of the internet, like looking up random people, looking up things about awakening. And I was sort of having these like kind of awakening moments in my room on my own,
Wow.
just through reading articles. And then, so yeah, I was quite in depression. And then I hit 27, and maybe this was what when I'm not very good at time. I'm 27. And then like the following year, I was still in the depression. And then I got to this point where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like everything started changing. I was like, I can't be a waitress forever. It's fine. Nothing wrong with being a waitress. I love it. But it's like, there's something else for me. So I just felt this calling, but I had no idea what I was doing. And then I started doing things I'd never done before, like going to tantra retreats. I didn't even know what tantra was. So suddenly I had all this energy, which was like, okay, I'm going to do things I've never done before. And I went to this sexuality thing. And I remember looking at the board of all the workshops and I was like, that scares the shit out of me. That scares the shit out of me. I'm going to do that. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, what the hell? So I just had this energy to do stuff I'd never done. And they say in your Saturn return that like, you know, bad things can happen, but also it can be really like intensely transformational. And I would say like from where I was before to where I suddenly got to, I was like, I never would have expected that. I never would have written down, oh yeah, like by the end of it, you'll be practicing healing and you'll be emotionally open and you'll be going to sexuality retreats. Like I would have been like, what? So yeah, my whole sort of view of life changed drastically. And it wasn't like I was looking for it. It sort of just happened. So I started listening to my heart, to my intuition, which I think I always did, but it was just clearer. Like things happened that I couldn't avoid, you know, things like this random person that I met invited me to this festival. And I was like, she doesn't even know me. Why is she inviting me? But it feels like a yes. And then my boss said, no, you can't take the time off. And I was like, fine. And then suddenly she said, you can take the time off. So I was like, okay, this is weird. Just stuff like that. Like it's like the universe was conspiring to like push me out of my cozy little depressed nest, which I wasn't happy in.
So you had most of your awakening moments while you were depressed?
Yeah, because I think, yeah, like, well, it wasn't like I had a bad life, you know? I was just really, I felt depths of loneliness. And it's very easy to feel lonely in a big city like London because there's people everywhere. But if you don't have friends or you don't have your people, like I had one really good friend, but you know, it's like, I was like, oh my God, I'm really alone. Where are my people? What am I doing here? I was so isolated. Yeah, so I went so inward, but in that inwardness, there was actually a light. And that's why I think my depression was nowhere near as bad as some people's, but it was definitely like, you know, it was a level of depression and it pushed me inside myself. And I guess in that way, I learned how to move out of it through reading things that helped me. But yeah, they were all obviously conceptual, but yeah.
That's interesting. That actually mimics my past 2.5 years, like perfectly in a weird way. Because yeah, like, you know, I moved in with my dad when COVID happened because lost my job, all this kind of stuff, right? So I moved in with my dad, and so it was like 2.5 years, and then we have a roommate as well who lives with us, so the three of us. And it's interesting because, yeah, it's been like 2.5 years of intense pressure. That's the only way I can talk. And like, because me and my dad, we're so much better than we used to be, but still, it's like we don't really see eye to eye fully. Like we're different people living different lives. And so what it's taught me is how to completely quarantine my energy, like how to just wall myself off from like everything. Because also my father's quite emotionally volatile. He's a very emotional person, and that's up and that's down. So it's just wild up, wild down, almost bipolar. And so like essentially what I told him this, I was like, you know, when I'm on recording days, when I'm recording podcasts, I can't be around you before I do a podcast, you know, like or at least if I'm going to be around you, I'm shut off. Like you won't be able to access me emotionally. Like I will be there, but like I will be in a cocoon of energy, you know what I mean? And so it's interesting, like it's taught me a very powerful skill of how to be in the eye of the storm and have the storm not affect you. Like that's just something I developed now. And so I can be almost around anybody, like people with like really big energies, even at the gym or something. I can just be around big alpha males and stuff. And I can just be like so calm. I can just be like in the eye of the storm, just like focused, like, you know, not right now, and just move on. And I think that like this was so important for me as being a podcaster because I might get controversial. I might have stuff thrown at me. I might have allegations thrown at me. I might have reputational damage. And I need the ability to set the record straight in a very calm way and not to lose my marbles. So I can be like, hey, I've heard these rumors being said of me. I just want to say, this is exactly what happened. This is a fabrication. This is an exaggeration of the truth. This is the truth. And so it's this ability to just sit in the eye of the storm under enormous pressure, maintain your center to the best of your ability, and to not fly off the handle. And also what's interesting is this all happened before my Saturn returns. So
well, I mean, the last 2 years have been crazy intense. It's been like intense to the whole planet. So yeah, it's like
yeah, so I'm just thinking huh, I wonder what my Saturn returns is going to be, because it might be a completely different thing for me. Like maybe my Saturn returns is tied with my Mexico trip. Maybe it's like a lot of people, I think we have this idea like Saturn returns is always Saturn, intense pressure, like focus, like it's this very Saturnian energy. But who knows? Like I don't know. Maybe for me it'll be different because I just came from so much of that. Maybe my Saturn returns will be kind of like a breaking open, like a liberation phase. I don't know. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see in 2 years when I'm around 30. It'll be interesting to look back and have my own interpretation of Saturn returns that I can teach people and that I can share with people. Because again, I think with a lot of teaching modalities is people get very locked into this is what the Vedas said, this is what this person said, this is what this guru said, and so everybody is always like, this is how it is. And I think that every rule has an exception in some sense. I think that everybody's unique, everybody's different, and that there are these truths in the universe, but all of us interact with truth from our vantage point, our advantage point. And so from that perspective, I'm like, when I go through a lot of these things, I might have a story to share with people who don't gel with the usual way people teach this thing. I might be like, actually, my experience was completely different than what other people have. And so if you're anything like me, maybe there's 10,000 people in the world like me, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. Maybe like you all have been trying, or you all have been fed a perspective of life that doesn't resonate with you, because that is somebody else's, that is an archetypal life path that you're not on. And so maybe I'm supposed to be the one, or one of the people who brings to the mainstream a different life path, a different life path that looks at certain archetypal experiences in life a different way,
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to categorize it, really, but I would say for me anyway, it was a bit of a plot twist. It was just, yeah, it was just good to know that once I realized I was in the Saturn return, that's where there was so much change in that short period. But some people maybe don't have a lot of change, but maybe there's a lot of internal change. Maybe there's a lot of it can really, it can really vary. But my Saturn return was like textbook in terms of just huge changes in my life, and whether it was, I mean, it was cool because it felt like there was so much energy supporting this huge direction that I was meant to change. And yeah.
How long did it go on for? A year or two?
Well, I don't know, because ever since I left my job in London and got into this new relationship, I moved into these healing groups, and that was a whole story in itself. And I only just left those groups last year. So I would say the intensity of my life didn't really slow down until, and it's not necessarily slowing down, because I think the energy of the planet right now is super intense, and it just is like, it's like we're all having to purge so much stuff. So I don't necessarily I feel like your Saturn return might be extra intense, or people who are in this portal, because the energy of the planet is super intense right now. Like just like the amount of things that are coming up and just want to release and leave my body so I become freer is a lot more than it ever has been, I would say. And not just because I'm more sensitive and tuned in now, just like, whoa.
It just life events are different. And also I'm curious because, like I alluded to, as someone who has a lot of control with me, I sometimes have a struggle finding out how I'm supposed to come by information and guidance. Because I feel like the way I have to come by information and guidance is by leading the charge. And then essentially the universe corroborates or collaborates with me, and I'm the instigator of the change. And
Do you
it's
know
very,
what, sorry, do you know
go
what your
on.
human design is?
Yeah, I'm a manifesting generator.
So your strategy is to respond.
I know, which I don't get because I'm
That's
so
basically.
used to instigating things. Like honestly, Hari, like the idea of the universe bringing me things, and all I have to do is say yes, like that. So calming. But I'm like, I have such a hard time even like imagining the possibility of that because I'm so trained that I need to make things happen. That's it. I need to make things happen. If I don't make them happen, they're not going to happen. You know?
But it doesn't mean that you don't make things happen. It's just about where it's coming from. So for me, right, like maybe for a long time, I wanted to be in control of making money, but it just wasn't happening because it was coming from a fear, it was coming from a fear of like, I'm going to run out. And I was being initiated into this experience of like, you just need to calm the hell down and you just need to trust in me. And I'm like, okay. And then I respond to what happens. Like people come to me and they want a healing session. I'm like, oh, okay, something's happening. I'm responding rather than coming from this huge fear of like, I'm going to be in control and I'm going to do this. Because
Find
usually,
clients.
yeah, I mean, yeah, what I do, the best thing I can put it down to is I follow my highest excitement. I listen to my heart. What do I want to put out? What feels good? What feels authentic to me? What feels true? Not because I want to make money or because I want to have clients. It doesn't work for me. It's like what feels true to me, what feels real. I do that and I flow with that. And then I wait to see what the universe pings back. It's not like, oh, I'm waiting, like hurry up. It's more just like I'm responding to what's happening, like, oh, cool. And then I go on that. And then, oh, there's another thing here. Like as soon as we let go of control and we just trust, things come. But if we're always trying to control, we don't see the little like notifications in the ether.
From your perspective, then, do you almost see it like I'm living like let's use me for an example, or you. So like let's say you're living your life. The old way of doing things is I need to make opportunities. Like that's like where I come from. Okay, let's use me because I don't know you. So the way I come from these things is I need to make opportunities happen because if I don't make them happen, they're not going to be presented to me. So then there's the universe way that you're describing is you don't have to make anything happen. The universe will provide opportunities and you have to say yes or no to the opportunities being presented to you. And then what making it happen is if it's a yes, going full throttle or full emotion, full inspiration, full passion into that. So would it be accurate from your perspective that you don't have to make things happen, that the universe will always bring opportunities to you? You don't have to find them? How do you see that relationship with the universe?
I think it's about really listening. And when we're always, if we're always lost in anxiety or fear or whatever, then that's what we're seeing. That's what we're listening to. But if we're able to, A, not give that so much energy and B, move through that emotion that's arising, then you actually start to be able to hear like the other subtleties, the intuition, the energy of like, oh, here. So that's how I would describe it. It's a tricky one because it's like, it's both. We have free will, right? Of course, we do need to act in order to make things happen, but life is already it's always happening. And it's about how we participate and how are we participating? Are we participating from fear and control and like, I need this to happen? Or are we acknowledging that maybe that's there, letting that go, and then listening, okay, because it's all in here. It's all in the heart. It's like, I'm I just made a decision many years ago to tune into my heart more than my mind. Listen to that. And some days I don't know what the hell I'm doing. People are like, what are you doing today? I don't know. Like, and then I just listen and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm doing. It doesn't come from here. It comes from here. But it takes time. You have to, we're trained to think only from here and to operate from here, which is the control always. But once we sort of like let that take a back seat and we let our body, we let our heart lead, it's already, then you kind of feel like it's already happening. Like, I'll tell you a crazy story, right? Me and my partner broke up, but we still went to this Tantra festival together.
When was this?
Last summer.
Gotcha.
We didn't break up for very long. But anyway, like, it was all, there's a whole other story that I haven't told you about, and I don't want to go into now because it's very intense. But there was a whole reason about why that happened. Anyway, as I started like uncovering like all the reasons why it happened, I realized, I actually think we're meant to be together once I removed all of the like blindfolds and all of the dark shit that was around me. And we did this exercise where there was like at least 100 people in a circle. And somehow the universe aligned us perfectly together, where the exercise was saying sorry and I forgive you, and just like bowing down and saying sorry. There's no way that I could have orchestrated that. There's no way that I was like, I want to make sure that I'm in line with him in a room full of over 100 people. And it aligned us together. It was like we were meant to come back together. It was just, so that's what I mean. There's like stuff like that when you're really like in the flow. I would call it the flow state. And you're not trying to control things and like get in the way. When we get out of the way, it's all happening. It's all taken care of. And then we listen, we hear the messages like, oh, Anton, go over here. And you're like, okay. Like when you go to Mexico, they might be like, Anton, go down that path. And you'll be like, why? And you'll be like, I don't know. And then you'll go and you'll find the love of your life and the best tacos ever. And you'll be like, yeah, I'm going to listen to that voice. You know, it's just...
I hear it. What do you think the relationship between the heart and the mind is? If the mind is not used to instigate things and the heart is used to instigate things, what is the role of the mind in your estimation?
I would say the mind, like, I don't want to like shit on the mind. The mind is amazing. The mind is how we understand. The mind is like knowledge. The mind is like an encyclopedia. It's sort of how we show up and operate. But the heart is the wisdom. The heart is the feeling. The heart is the portal to everything. So when we make the knowledge and the like understanding everything the biggest thing, that's what we're going to get. Whereas we move more to living a heart-based life, we're going to feel more, we're going to have more wisdom, and that wisdom is going to guide us rather than like knowledge and I need to understand everything before I do it and I need to be in control. The mind's more like a computer. The heart's more like intuitive. They feel completely different.
What I just had an epiphany with, and I'd love your thoughts on this after. It's almost like the heart instigates new experiences. The mind reflects on experiences that are over. And what we often do is like the mind is what creates the framework for understanding existence. It's like if all we did was live by our heart, we would just be saying yes and no and being pulled like a string through our life. And it's like the mind that reflects, the mind that builds these models, the mind that dreams. Like the mind is very creative. But from what I gathered, what we do is we've had all these experiences that are actually instigated by the heart. And we've built up this really big framework in this knowledge database. And it's a really incredible knowledge database about how the universe works, how the world works, how we work, how people work. And what we mistakenly do is then moving forward, we try to utilize the knowledge database we have to make all future decisions. And we've forgotten that the only thing that started our life, the only thing that we ever lived from was our heart. It was always the heart and our inspiration and our heart-based curiosity, not mental-based curiosity, a heart-based curiosity that took us down this road and that road and, you know, brought us into a convention and had us learn about this and had us learn about that and have us learn about Nazi Germany and all these things. And so, yeah, it's like we get fooled into, we build enough of a database that we then stop living through our heart and we instead try to live through our database.
Well, and that database also has quite often a lot of trauma in it. That kind of
Mm,
that then paints our picture of reality. So then, maybe the heart will be like, "Oh, let's do this." Oh no, I'm not doing that because last time I got rejected. So it keeps us, because if you think about kids, like before they get homogenized and kind of conditioned, they're just like, woo, like they're just completely guided by, like, they're not logical. They're just
yeah.
guided completely. So yeah, I
And
really feel like the whole journey is just about really reconnecting with our inner child, not like hiding it away in this little box because we don't want to face all that stuff, and just allowing ourselves to play, like to be a kid, like it's the
wow.
best. Like that's what I
Wow.
like. If I don't laugh in a day, I know it's been a really bad day. I want to I just enjoy life and just like have fun and do things that I did when I was a kid because like if you don't enjoy and play, then what's the point?
Wow. I just realized as you were saying that our society demonizes children so much. Like we view children as fucking idiots. Like they are these instinctual idiots. And we need as parents to take care of them, to make sure that they don't do anything stupid and that whatever their instincts tell them to do is foolish. Like that is our Western, or at least the way in Canada where I was brought up, my aspect of Canadian culture.
Mm.
And so I am deeply ashamed of my child side. Like me, Anton Czachor. Like I'm deeply ashamed of that because I think that part of me is an idiot. And that part of me is not mature,
Mm.
not responsible. No, it can't be loved. No woman would ever be attracted to a child. No wise, mature human being would ever want to be friends with a child. So it's like literally, and we talk about, inner child work, and I even talk about inner child work sometimes. But I didn't realize until just now, like, it's still from the lens of like the adult accepting the inner child, like the adult's right. You know what I mean? And the adult will accept the inner child to a certain degree, and then it will say, all right, that's enough inner child. We're adults are at play here. We're working now, and you're gonna go shut up in your room again. And then when I'm ready to talk with my inner child again, I'll let it out as the adult. I'll open the door. It's like always like the adult has control. The adult has the keys to the room. And the inner
Mm.
child, as much as we're going like, oh yeah, connect with our inner child, like it's always like on like as an adult connecting with your inner child. It's rarely actually just being a child or being like very youthful. And so that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, something.
Realizing that toxic relationship we have with our intuition, because our heart is kind of like a child. It is excitable. It's do this, do that. Like almost how the heart communicates. It's just through inspiration. It's like yes and no. You know what I mean? It's not really logical. It's more just like I want to do that, and that's the right thing to do because from the heart I want to do that.
Yeah, it's less, kids are less complicated because they haven't yet got all of the encyclopedia of trauma that they're constantly referencing to stop them doing things. And but this is like I do a lot of inner child work with people just to reconnect them with their inner child first. And then I say, is there something that you did as a child that you absolutely loved doing that you haven't done again as an adult? And then like they usually like, oh yeah, like they'll suggest something really cute and amazing. And I said, can do you have the capacity to go and do that? Give yourself some time to just go and do that. And usually like this, like their whole face changes and it's like, oh my God, like that permission to just do something you love doing as a child, like no matter how crazy or silly it is, like going and buying a rubber dinghy and just like floating in a pool for hours. Amazing. Like, why don't we like give ourselves permission, or buying yourself a toy and like cuddling it at night? Who cares? Like that's awesome.
Mm,
It's like the child lives within us, but like you say, it's not something that we have to like hide away. It's like it's always here. Like maybe the child goes to the store and it wants to have sweets, and let your child play sometimes, because otherwise it all gets too serious and damn intense.
mm. Wow, that's super uncomfortable for me to hear that. It's like it's super uncomfortable because I have like a feeling if I really let what is this feeling? I have a feeling like if I let the child out, my life will fall apart.
Mm.
Ooh, I think it was
But that's the
because,
control thing, right? If I let go of
yeah,
control, because children don't seem like they're in control. They're just free.
yeah. And maybe abandonment, I think, comes into that too. Abandoned in high school, abandoned. I don't want to, like, not in a victim way, but like, and then like me and my
Mm.
best friend broke up in university, like my housemate. And I think I told myself a story that I need to be mature and responsible or people will leave. And I think
Mm.
I've been a prisoner of that story. I didn't even realize that was immediately the story I started telling myself. And I can't even imagine. I have a very difficult time imagining a reality where I can be free from the shackles of responsibility and maturity that I've chained myself to.
Wow. Well, is there something? Did something come to mind when I asked that question that you loved doing when you were like little Anton in Canada when
The
you were a kid?
first, the first thing that's kind of like dumb that came up is I used to play a lot of video games, which I used to like video games, and I stopped playing video games, and I still play them like once a week or something. But even that, I think like they're addictive, and I kind of control myself. Like I only give myself like a few hours a week or something to play them, and then I thought of another one of like something about jumping into a lake or something outside. And then like when you talked about the pool, lounging in a pool, that kind of gave me simultaneously a bit of anxiety and calmness, because like even like on my off days, like now, I schedule my off days. I'm like, okay, on my off day, you can play video games from 1 till 3, or you can do this for like, it's still like, because what I do find myself happening, I'm curious your thoughts on this. I find that I have a tendency when I'm given nothing, I just like end up on social media on YouTube, and it's so addictive. I realized this the other day. It's like it's so hard because YouTube is always giving me exactly what it knows I want. And it's just like just one after the other. And it's just like if I don't schedule my days, the chaos of those algorithms will steal my day away from me in some sense. And so I literally deleted YouTube, Instagram, like I deleted everything off my phone the other day.
Mm.
It's just like sometimes I just feel like an addict, man. Like it's wild. I always tell people I don't have an addictive personality. I don't eat sweets. I don't eat. I'm off sugar for 2.5 years, but I think my addiction is stimulation. You know?
But it's that's how it's designed. I mean, and most human beings, for the most part, are addicted to something, whether it's food, whether it's social media, and it's tough. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
you've looked at Gabor Maté's work about addiction, right? And it's just that lack of connection or like that not wanting to be alone or be with ourselves. And it's tough.
Mm,
Like we all have addictions to cope with this very intense world. And the only thing that I find helps for me anyway is being in nature because
mm.
nature doesn't ask of anything of you. Nature is abundant and it's just so that's what I find. And maybe that'll be amazing for you when you go to Mexico because you'll have so much nature where you can be out because you're not in cold Canada and you can be outside and just be like in the water or the jungle or whatever. And
Yeah. It gives like, oof, gives me anxiety to be in nature sometimes too. Because again, I've conditioned myself to feel like if I'm not producing something, I'm wasting my time. So I feel like being in nature is a waste of time. I
mm,
feel like, yeah, it's like I'm terrified of wasting my time, and it's like it's almost like a trap that like I can never relax because wasted time is in some sense the definition of like relaxation. Like obviously it's not, but like in some sense, like when you're just doing nothing, like you're relaxing and like I'm afraid, like I feel like I'm just wasting my time if I just go in nature for a while, you know?
But this is like what you're kind of speaking of points to this capitalistic world we live in, which is like do, 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 do. There's, and I think there's sort of an epidemic now of people like either getting burnt out or realizing that actually rest is one of the most important things that we can give ourselves. It's hard to get out of that like constant rat race, doing, doing, doing thing. I feel you because it's so conditioned into us from school.
Yeah. It's like even these podcasts I do. Like I don't do them because I want to do them. I do them because I owe my community something. And I feel like I have a dream for what I want to accomplish in the world, and even that is capitalistic to the max. It's like I want to like be one of the premier podcasters in the world. You know what I mean? Like I want to be up there with Aubrey Marcus and some of these legendary podcasters.
But why would you want to do something that you don't enjoy or isn't a heart yes? Isn't that a bit soul destroying? For me, it is anyway.
This is the interesting relationship I have with it. It does inspire me a lot. Like I love that. But what happens in this capitalistic structure where I'm afraid of being homeless and I'm afraid of not having money. So my dream becomes perverted by the need to maintain the dream to get money. So it starts off pure. It starts off just like, man, I like, even that though, it's like, if I lived in a communist country and I had a universal basic income, would I still have the same dream? It's like, it's almost become so perverted that I don't even know why I'm doing it anymore. It's like it started off pure. I love podcast. I love talking to people, but it's become a job. It's like this thing that I love so much has become a necessity and an obligation to maintain, to schedule 3 every week. Because if I don't, things are going to fall apart. And the only way I grow faster is by doing more podcasts or
By pushing yourself.
by pushing myself. It's like I have like a bit of anxiety right now, even thinking about it. Like I feel so trapped. Like I feel, yeah, it's stressful. I feel trapped by the merging of my dream and the necessity to survive. You know what I mean?
But the thing is, like, from when we first spoke, sounds like you're pretty sorted with money and stuff. Like, sometimes we can get so caught up in this future idea of where we need to be, and there's so much fear that we may not make it. But we forget to look about what we have right now. Like, maybe take stock of that. Like, this is what I've got right now. I'm okay. Like, and this is probably where this trust and this, like, what you're working on, this trust and this control, right? Because it's like, if you let go of control and you just trust that you're going to be taken care of, and also just acknowledge like what you have right now, which is you're okay. You're it's like, wow, like practicing gratitude is some of the best medicine and the most simplest medicine that anyone can do. It's the best remedy for fear and for future stuff. It's like, so that's what I do anyway when I'm starting to freak out. I'm like, what do I have here? Like, I have so much. I'm so blessed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I'm taking a month and a half off when I go to Mexico. Like I'm not
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, can you do that when you go to Mexico? Can you just chill for a bit? Like,
yeah, even that I have this like intense idea like I need to try like even my idea of travel is like capitalistic. It's like I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to enjoy this place. I'm going to go on this hike. I'm going to get to the top of that mountain. I'm going to go to Puerto Vallarta. Then I'm going to go to Ensenada. It's like it's so linear. It's goal focused. Like I'm not going to Mexico to enjoy Mexico. I'm going to Mexico to do this thing called traveling where I collect like Pokemon, these experiences. And I catalog these experiences for my followers because I owe them content. And if I do not provide content, I stop growing. And if I stop growing, I stop making money. And then it's like, so it's this whole thing. Like I just realized like how like I didn't think I was so trapped before talking on this podcast. This is all coming up with you right now. Like I feel so trapped, and I have, quarantined these fears. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like I just pretend like I'm not afraid of these things, but really like I just feel like obligated all the time. Like, and I don't know how to, like, it's so hard to just enjoy life because there's always an expectation of the perception I'm supposed to have. Again, like even just going on vacation, it's like I have an expectation. I better fucking enjoy it because I only have a month and a half, and if I don't enjoy it, I'm back to the grind for a year. And
But
then
what
I
if
have
you let
another.
go of those expectations? What if you let go of this concept? Like, if you could just see this concept, like, I'm trapped. It's just a belief. It's just a concept. Only you have the power, right? Like, so if you decided, like, okay, I'm going to take a month off, I'm not going to plan my trip around Mexico, I'm just going to listen. Trust me, by the way, when I first went traveling, I did the same thing as you. I was like planning everything, booking all my flights. It didn't work. And I quickly learned, this is not the way to travel. And I let go. But it took me some time to get to that point. So I'm giving you a little heads up, it doesn't work, or it's not as enjoyable. Because you might meet someone and you'd be like, oh, I wanted to go party with them, but I got a flight tomorrow. Dang. And then
Yeah.
you miss the way the universe wants to guide you because of your pre-thought out plan. It's not so good. But I mean, of course you can have that view that you're trapped, but it's just an idea.
Yeah.
You hold the power. You have enough money to support yourself to live for a while before you become a bum. So you're
Yeah.
good. What if you just practice that trust just a little bit? I know that your goal about being a big famous podcaster is big, but it's taking more than a month and a half off and just living and being and just allowing yourself to be for a bit won't stop that happening if it's meant to happen.
Yeah.
But only you can feel that for yourself.
I know. Yeah, and I think there's a deeper fear of not being anything. I think because a lot of time when I was growing up, I didn't feel like I was anything special. So I think I've clinged on to this ambitious dream as a way to make myself feel special. Where if I let go of the dream, it's like, who am I now? And it's like, I'm curious to see what Mexico does to me.
Me too.
Because my soul told me to start scheduling podcasts again March 1st. So it's like my soul kind of is like boxing me in again. I know it's not, but it's like, okay, I know on March 1st I need internet. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things, and who knows, maybe I'll end up having to cancel them, which will be tough.
Just let go of all of those future ideas. You're here right now with me in this
Yeah,
podcast. None of that shit matters. Here, like
yeah.
right now. Like we get so lost in these future projections.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I know. Like fuck. Oh Jesus.
There's always a million what ifs. But there's only right now. Here right now. And here right now is pretty chill. Speaking of
Yeah.
you.
I think I need to let my life fall apart and just see what happens. And
Yeah.
just like not schedule anything and let some people down. Like I
Don't even
just,
plan it. Don't even plan. Just listen. Listen to your heart.
yeah, just one step at a time.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's scary, dude. Oh, it's ah.
It's scary, but it's also not scary. It's also exciting.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering if anyone else feels this trap sometimes, like below
Oh, I'm
below
sure.
it. And like I just had no clue about it. you know? It's like, imagine all the people that just like also feel the way I do and just like have no clue. And they've just told themselves they're happy and they're fine, but really they
Yeah,
just,
I was totally in one of those for 20 years. I was in a self-made prison.
wow.
And it was a bit of a slap around the face when I realized it, but then it was also amazing because I came out of it. And
Wow. Mm. Thank you. This is where we're going to spearhead the last 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to sit with this after the podcast. Sit with this just fear. This fear of everything is going to fall apart. Like, I don't even know what that'll look like. I'm creating these things of homelessness and
yeah, I understand. I have those fears too sometimes. They're intense.
yeah, and then letting go of this ambition, because like I think the ambition's a trap too. I think I've attached myself to ambition, where I think there's like a real dream, but it's been trapped inside this like alpha complex. Like, I need to be an alpha. I need to be like a type A personality to have any value. Because my dad can't love me if I'm not a type A. So much of the people like mirrored back to me my value is all these things, like you're smart, you're wise, you're ambitious, you're like courageous. Like, a lot of people do say like they love my heart, but I like minimize that, and I'm like, yeah, you love my heart, but like you really love all the other, like, would you love my heart if that's all I was? Like, if I didn't have all these other glorious things and big dreams and ambitions, would you still love me? It's like, it's that I think is that fear. It's like, I don't feel like my heart, and in some sense, I don't feel like I'm enough at just like, yeah, that was the message. That was the message I was told growing up all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest core wounds that a lot of humans hold is I'm not enough as I am. I have it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, makes me a bit emotional. Yeah. Yeah, I just want this prison to be shattered. But I'm like,
You already are
like
shattering it.
Thank you.
Just keep trusting and listening.
Yeah. Whew. Thank you. Thanks, Hari. So now jumping into the end of this, you can even see like my whole body language, like my shoulders like drooping forwards. I feel like a little kid. I feel like a vulnerable little kid right now.
Feel him.
And then I feel ashamed of being a kid because I feel like that kid's not lovable. So it's like, yeah, it's scary just even feeling that kid, because I'm like, yeah, a lot of people didn't value you. A lot of people gave up on you. Yeah, it was like, yeah, that kid was just never enough, So it's like, that's why I'm afraid of my inner child. Because I'm afraid of, yeah, being abandoned again.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's not even safe being that kid. It's like that, like, mature father, big brother, tough guy needs to step in to protect that kid. And by protecting that kid, I can never actually see that kid.
Yeah.
It's like having a child, and the only way you can protect your child is to lock him up so the world can't break him. And part of that is you can't see him either. So it's like I'm protecting myself by never allowing myself to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be happy to schedule like a inner child meeting with you if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be long, but if you wanted to, like, I could hold a space where you can go and meet little Anton and we can just see what's up. I'd be
Uh,
happy to do that for you.
that'd be cool. And I'll definitely pay you for it, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be nice, because I think that's like the root of all my fear. I think that's like the root of my control challenges, my control addiction
No.
is, yeah, just like that little spontaneous kid's not enough. So
Mm.
you need to control them. Well, even that was my upbringing growing up.
Mm.
I was expelled twice, suspended like 25 times. So like
Mm.
the unsaid thing was like, you gotta fucking control this kid. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, don't let him be himself. Like, that's dangerous. He's going to
Mm.
spiral out of control, and he's like unfit for society. Like, that was pretty much like what it was like said to me when I was a kid. Like, I was like unfit for society. Like, I was a danger to everybody around me. I was an emotional danger. I was a physical danger.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm like deeply ashamed of that kid.
And you're trying to prove that you're not a failure, right? By having this big dream.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
And you're doing amazing. You see it
Nice.
all.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to be loved, man. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like,
Mm.
yeah, I just want somebody to love me unconditionally and like code for I just
That
want to be
starts
able
with
to.
you, though.
I know. Yeah,
You have to start with you because if you don't love yourself unconditionally,
yeah.
it's a big journey, though. It's like I don't love myself unconditionally all the time, but much better now than I used to be.
What does it mean to to love yourself unconditionally over only some of the time?
I guess it's like when I have really big traumas coming up, there's a kind of like, oh, I wish this wasn't like this, or I want this to be gone. And it's not so much like that anymore, but any kind of violence towards myself and not accepting myself fully as I am. I'm not fully just loving myself as I am and just accepting that this is my messy humanness. And so any kind of internal violence or criticism, I have a huge inner critic that's like
Yeah,
constantly,
me too.
and it's so destructive. And I have to catch this. So it's like, it's that I'm catching. So sometimes it gets in because it's so strong and it's been there for so long. And other times it's like, oh, okay, no, it's okay. And I listen, hug my inner child or I'm with her. But it's a journey. It's an up and down journey. And all you can do is to have the intention that you want to really honor your little one and be with them and acknowledge and see them, basically, see yourself.
Do you know of anybody that loves themselves unconditionally all the time? Do you know of anybody, friends with anybody, any spiritual masters or people you know of?
I mean, I have an amazing friend. He's a fruitarian. He lives in Costa Rica, and he is pretty amazingly happy all the time. I don't know if he loves himself all the time, but he's a pretty amazing being, and he's just always like every time I talk to him, I feel relaxed, and he always seems just really just accepting of himself and life. And I
Hmm.
don't know, but he's a person that comes to mind when you ask that question. But I think this is maybe we'll never be 100% loving ourselves. Like maybe that's not the point. Maybe like it's just part of our messy humanness to. But it's just about for me anyway how I respond to what's happening and how quickly I can come back to like the truth, which is yeah, feeling my heart, feeling
Hmm.
the truth of this existence that you were talking earlier about how freedom is the highest value. And the biggest freedom is having freedom from all of this, the thoughts, the
Yeah.
nastiness. It's like, it may always be there, but we don't have to give it energy. We can always come back to the breath and presence. Like right now, I'm breathing and I can feel my heart beating. And none of that, none of that has to have any kind of weight over me if I don't let it. And that's really the training though. I put myself through like, okay, don't go into that. And if I do, it's also okay. I'm not going to hate myself if I do go into it, because it's just a part of our conditioning and we're trying to unravel from it. But there's no wrong in either way. It's just how it is.
Yeah, man, that guy in Costa Rica is my North Star now. If he can be accepting of himself most of the time, I know I can too. It's just like, yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm better than I was. Even the fact I'm able to get this vulnerable on a podcast, like I wouldn't have been able to do this 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I've come a long way in 2.5 years. A really long way. I look back at some of my podcasts 2.5 years ago. I'm like an Energizer bunny who was just like, what the hell was I talking about? You know what I mean? And it's just, yeah, I've grounded myself a lot in 2.5 years, and who knows where I'll be in another 2.5 years. I just want to love myself more.
That's a beautiful intention to have.
Yeah, I want to trust myself. I want to love myself. I just want to trust I'll be okay if I don't have to fucking control everything. Because it's just painful. It's just always stressful. And I just want to be free. Yeah. And yeah, I want to help create a world where we can all hold space for that, hold space for each other, and just make that process easier. You know? Because if we lived in a society that was just more accepting, that would be the dominant energy field around ourselves. It would help. So gonna do what I can to help usher that in and do it for me, and know that at the end of the day I'm doing it so I can help just support my process of loving myself and accepting. It almost even makes me think if the inner child is such a beautiful thing to be, what is an adult? What's the role of an adult?
Is an adult just an idea? Because we're all just grown up children also. That we get told that we have to have all these responsibilities, but I know people that just go and live in the jungle and they just live wild and they're free.
Really?
We can live any way. It's just there's a certain way that's been prescribed to live that we've all been homogenized into. And that's what people are starting to move out of, right? When people are coming back to sort of living in grassroots communities and living closer to the earth, more in tune with the elements. And yeah, it's happening. The world is shifting, but it all starts with ourselves, right? If I want to live in a more accepting society and world, I have to accept myself, and I have to love myself and practice that. And that frequency is part of the whole, because we're all one. We're not separate. So it's just, that's why I like Matthias so much, because he talks so much about unity and about how we're not really special, but we are at the same time, because we're living in duality, And it's we're just all part of this. We're all one. We just forget that. And it's beautiful, to be reminded of all of those things.
Yeah, I love Matthias. I'm excited to have him on my podcast one day.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I love him. He's a very loving dude. He's just I just love his vibe. He's so pure. It's almost too pure for this world. You know what I mean? It's for Western culture, sometimes it's just how does this guy exist in our culture? Yeah, I like him a lot. Well, Hari, so now, it's plug time. So if you could please share with myself where we can all find you, social media, that kind of stuff, website, what you're currently working on, if anything, and what we can do to support you if we're called to.
Yeah. So my website is sacredflute.org. And my Instagram is sacred_flute. So that's pretty much where you find me. I work individually with women, which is what I say on my website, but I do also work with men. I have been working with men too. Really, a lot of what me and Anton have spoken about kind of is a lot about what I do. It's about this relationship we have with ourselves, how we relate to ourselves, our inner child, this sort of thing. So it's called relational healing because it's, for me anyway, the most important relationship we do have is with ourselves. So it's, all about coming into closer contact with ourselves, how to come in contact with our emotions, release them, and connect more with the heart, like using the heart as a portal to alchemize these things, like, and really holding a safe space for you to do that. Like, it's not me, it's just I'm holding this safe space to reflect you and to give you that support that maybe you haven't had in your life. And it's so close to my heart because it's the journey that I've been on. And so I give the thing that I didn't have and I want to give back. So it really comes from a pure heart place, and not because, I want to make money and whatever, like if I don't make money doing this, then I go work as a vegan chef or something, It's not like I have to do this. So and then, I also work with couples too, because I've had quite a long relationship with my current partner, and we have been through all of the stuff. So I really have quite a good understanding of, conflict and how to resolve it and how to come back together in love. And it's actually something I really love. I love holding space for couples to come back to each other. So I really love to work with people individually or together. Just to really come back to yourself and to really feel that truth in your heart. And let that guide you through your life. Hope that summed it up okay.
Summed it up as well as you want to. Well, yeah, thank you for a very beautiful conversation. I think this is the first time I've cried on camera, so.
Amazing. Thank you
Nice.
for sharing your vulnerability.
Yeah. And then, thanks for, creating a space that's very, safe for that. And not everyone can do that, so. Yeah, you have a gift with that. So you're definitely doing the right thing, holding space for people because you're good at it. So thank you for holding space. For me.
Happy to.
Right.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on your podcast. It's been such a pleasure to have these amazing conversations with you.
Beautiful. All right, Hari, take care.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to check out more episodes just like this one, click right here, and I'll see you in the next one.